Woohoo. Okay. Video source. Aha. Can you see yourself?
Yeah.
They can't hear us, by the way. We can hear each other, but they can't hear us. They'll just be like, what is going on? Okay, let me just fix this and then I'll get rid of it. Okay. Is that okay? It feels like it's up close for you.
Up close and personal with Sonny.
Getting in. Do you want me to zoom my head in?
Just a little bit, please.
Okay.
Even.
Is that better? I look like a dead person. Okay, I'm changing it back. We'll be back soon.
continue the conversation in it.
Yeah, here we come. Hello. Hopefully this is working and I don't have the same technical issues. Welcome to Princess and the Pea, a very, very special live episode with Sonny Jane Wise. If any of you don't know Sonny, have you been living under a rock? No, but seriously, I'm really excited about today. Sonny and I have been in touch for many, many months now, and I was just telling them that I feel like we know each other well. This is not like a first time we've spoken to me. It feels like it's not anyway. But I'm so excited to have you here to share about this incredible day and celebrate with all of our neurokin. So welcome, Sonny, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Anyway,
I just like to say to everyone that me and Annie were actually like having a conversation.
We were.
Before we jumped on the live, but as soon as we jumped on the live, it's like, oh no, awkward.
Yeah, no, it's exactly. Thanks for pointing that out, Sonny. So true, so true. We were so like chill, and then we're like, oh, we've got to be formal. What is your fidget? Show me your fidget. I need to see. Oh, that's so cool.
These are the stim mags. They're actually like made by PhD, and I love them so much because the force of the magnet
is really strong.
Really strong and really satisfying. And like,
so cool.
I can do so much with them, like just.
Oh my God, that's awesome. I want them. Where did you get them from?
Literally a website called Stim Mags.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. I'm always looking to add to my list. Okay, I'm just getting the comments up now. I'm not sure if you can see them, Sonny.
No, I cannot.
You can't?
You can read them out.
Okay. Let me see if I can get them on the screen. I've forgotten how to do this. Oh, that worked. Yes. Woohoo. Ready with my pride. You. We can hear you. That's good. Right. Oh, that's so fun. Oh, wow. Maybe they could hear us properly chatting. Oh, well, that's good. Oh, funny. That's okay. It's working.
Didn't say anything offensive.
No, we didn't. We honestly, we were just starting the chat early.
Yeah, we were just like noticing the misusage of neurodiversity.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Why don't we dive in? So no, seriously, a lot of people might be confused because this week there's also another day called Neurodiversity Pride Day, which seems pretty similar, but it's not similar, and there is a distinction, and I think it'd be really good to dive into that because Sonny and I are very, very passionate about distinguishing the difference between the two. So I might let you take that away, Sonny, because you're amazing at talking about this.
Oh, shit, where do I start?
Yeah, I know, right?
No, yeah, like I guess Neurodiversity Pride Day. I mean, let's put this literally. Neurodiversity Pride Day. It's about celebrating neurodiversity and pride in neurodiversity, and like that's awesome. I think we should absolutely celebrate and accept and affirm neurodiversity. But the thing is, and like I try to use this comparison, LGBT like QIA plus like Pride Month isn't called Gender and Sexual Diversity Pride Month. And that's because it is about the specific experiences and identities of LGBT people. And that's the same for Neurodivergent Pride Day. Like, it's not about neurodiversity. It is about the specific experiences and identities of neurodivergent people. It is about neurodivergent experiences and neurodivergent differences and neurodivergent, identities and community and joy. It's not about neurodiversity. It is specifically about our neurodivergent identity. And I think that is such an important distinction, especially when we're treated like crap and excluded and oppressed and, bullied and threatened and harmed and seen as less than. We need that day. Yeah.
We so need that day. We do. And I think that's what it's really irritating when people use neurodiversity in place of neurodivergent, because it's like saying all lives matter instead of Black Lives Matter, And if you just said that, and I totally missed that part, I was trying to multitask and read the comments at the same time. Oh, good. Okay. I'm like, you probably said that because like that's legit how it feels to me. I'm like, you're invalidating our experience and the real barriers and oppression that we face as a minority group. And even though neurodiversity sounds inclusive and it sounds like, you know, like people say, oh, you're not disabled, you're differently abled. Like, really? No, I'm disabled. I'm neurodivergent. Both of those things have a really strong part of my identity and my lived experience. And, you know, a lot of people say, I think a lot of the comments that we sort of see pop up on places, especially like LinkedIn, are really talking about, you know, oh, you know, language, it's just language. What does it matter? Or, you know, sometimes I even read that's, you know, oh, just let it go. Like, it's not a big thing.
There are bigger to try or more important to focus on. But language is part of it because
language,
you're right.
Language is so important. Sorry, Sonny.
Yeah. Like, I feel like when we use neurodiversity instead of neurodivergent, we are like erasing neurodivergent. We are like ignoring it and dismissing it and erasing it. And we are so used to that we don't want to replicate that. We are already used to being erased and invalidated
100%.
As less than and that we don't matter. We don't want to replicate that within the neurodiversity movement.
I mean, why do you think we mask, right? Like it's literally because our existence is pushed away. Like we shouldn't be who we are, so we have to pretend not to be safe.
Yeah. And I think as well, like we have to use neurodivergent because we have to acknowledge the reality that our functioning and our differences diverge from neuronormativity. I think neuronormativity is such an important piece of the puzzle within the neurodivergent experience that you can't really be neurodiversity affirming or you can't really, support neurodivergent people if you do not recognize and unpack neuronormativity. And I think that's why neurodivergent is so important because it is acknowledging that our functioning diverges from neuronormativity. But when we use neurodiverse or neurodiversity instead of neurodivergence, we're not including neuronormativity. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And a lot of the work I do with neurodivergent adults, it's really about coming down to talking about ableism, internalized ableism, helping them find their voice, helping them think they deserve help, helping them think that they're not broken and they're not disordered. And so much of that really, really comes down to understanding all the external layers there of, neuronormativity that you really need to dismantle and unpack. And that is at the core of being able to self-advocate for yourself, to, get access to society, everything. It's, underpins it.
Unpack shame and to move away from viewing yourself as broken and disordered and wrong. Like in order to do that and in order to move towards neurodivergent pride and finding acceptance in yourself, you have to recognize neuronormativity because then you can realize, oh, hang on, like the way I'm functioning right now isn't wrong. It's just society has, set up a certain way of functioning to be seen as the right way to function. And I don't meet that ideal. I don't fit into that narrow box of what society wants. But that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me. Yeah, and so I feel like you have to recognize that in order to get to that level of acceptance.
Yeah, and it's really hard to do when those messages are so strong, not just from the pathologizing DSM criteria and how the medical model of disability treats us, but also even just in general society, like how ADHDers get 20,000 more negative comments by age 10. These messages are constantly telling us, your inner voice is based on your early years and what messages you received. And when the messages around you, however well-meaning, were really negative, it's so deep. And it takes so much effort to unpack. I don't think that I'll ever get to a point where I will be completely free from internalized ableism. I really wish that was true, but it sneaks up constantly. Similarly to, I have an eating disorder and I'm very much doing good these days, but I also don't think that that's ever going to really not be there. And that's okay. It doesn't mean anything. I'm not a lesser person. I still deserve every right to access everything in life, to be loved, to be accepted, to be everything. Right?
No, absolutely. And I think, and that brings me to two things. One, that's why we need neurodivergent pride, because that is a way for us to challenge like that ableism that we grow up hearing. It's a way to challenge the crappy narrative that we constantly are exposed to. And two, I think as well, it is so important to acknowledge that we can have pride in our neurodivergence and still struggle. We can have pride in our neurodivergence and still, for lack of a better word, dislike ourselves sometimes, or be, tired of, how disabling it is. We can experience those things and then still be like, but you know what? I'm still not broken.
Exactly. And this doesn't reflect on, any of those things about whether I need help or not, or whether people in my life should love me or put up with me or whatever you want to call it. Like, I think that that's often a mistake, that people think that pride means that you can't be frustrated and that you can't get upset about being different. And I think that's a really good point, Sonny. It's not that. It's really just a matter of acknowledging that we need some kind of counterbalance to the shame, right? We need something to drag us out of that dark hole that society tries to push us into, that we don't deserve to be in, that no one deserves to be in, that so many minority groups are put in. And I just, I'm terrible at multitasking, so I'm trying to see the comments, and thank you for all the comments. They're so good. This one from Mel says, it wasn't until I joined the online neurodivergent community that I understood the difference, and now the confusion between the two annoys me too. Yeah. I also think that's quite common, like, especially us autistic folks tend to be pretty detail oriented and we like rules and structure, and
nothing wrong with
there's nothing wrong with that. Word. Yes, absolutely. And Penry says we love the detail, but also important to visibility and identity. Absolutely, 100%. Oh, cool. Yeah, wonderful to see so many DE and I people here. Woohoo! Yeah. Well, that's another thing. It's like, I think the thing that can get lost when we're not really focusing on neurodivergent is that when we do get allies in, it's almost like they don't feel like genuine and authentic allies, because they're just doing the tokenistic, we want to be inclusive, neurodiversity, woo.
When organizations and policies and projects use neurodiversity, when they mean neurodivergent, we can pick that up from a mile away, and we're like, how can we trust you when you don't even use the right terminology? It shows.
Yeah. And actually on that point, something that started to concern me last year is because obviously I do a lot of stuff in the health sort of system, and seeing a lot more therapists and such putting neurodiversity affirming practice on their websites, and then reading more and realizing that they are absolutely not neurodiversity affirming. And so one of the things that sometimes worries me, usually it's really easy for me to know if I see someone saying neurodiversity when they should be using neurodivergent, then I'm pretty much quick to be like, okay, you have a pretty limited understanding of this. I'm not really sure, it's just like the spidey senses are back, right? But then when they use neurodivergent, because some of them are starting to use neurodivergent, which is great, but a couple, not many, thank goodness, are still not quite getting it. Because I hear people say, like, I don't even think you can really say neurodivergent condition in the same sentence, because you're mixing up two paradigms, right?
Not allowed.
I'm like, no, I'm neurodivergent. The condition is what the medical profession put on me, sure. And that's what I need to access disability, which is, a system issue, not anything else. But it's not a neurodivergent condition.
Yeah, they're they're using, neurodiversity paradigm language while still like using pathology paradigm language. It's like they are separate paradigms, and neurodivergent is an identity. It's not a description for another medical condition.
It's not a label that someone else has power to put on us.
Yeah.
Right?
It's something only we can claim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nice to see you, Jenny. Thanks for sharing. No worries. Our voices will be heard. We get loud. I love that, Sonny. You're like,
I can't read that close.
Yes, it's tiny. Sorry, I can't change it. Anyway, I'm still trying to.
As well, because I think this needs to be said. Neurodivergent pride, right? It is not just for autistic people or ADHD people or people with learning disabilities.
Oh, yes.
Neurodivergent Pride Day is for people who hear voices. It is for people with bipolar who experience manic episodes. It is people
OCD.
with GID or OSDD where there are multiple systems. Or it's for people with plurality. It is for people with OCD. It is for people with acquired brain injuries, epilepsy, Tourette's. Neurodivergent Pride Day is for everyone.
So true.
I think that's something that, I just think is so important is it is for everyone who is neurodivergent, not just because, for me, as someone who with bipolar type 1, just so people are aware, someone who experiences manic episodes, I am so often told that, manic episodes or bipolar shouldn't be neurodivergent because it is something that can be fixed. It is something that changed. It's something, people believe that, and this is non-bipolar people, that manic episodes are only ever bad, they're only ever dangerous or harmful. And I do not believe that is true.
No.
Manic episodes can be disabling and they can be challenging and they can absolutely be distressing. But the whole point of neurodivergence, as well as like being neurodiversity affirming, is that we do not define people's experiences for them. And so what that means for bipolar and manic episodes is that not everyone is going to find manic episodes distressing. And whether manic episodes are distressing or not.
Some actually really like them and miss them on meds.
It's also dependent on so many factors. Like a manic episode can be so much less distressing when you have an actual supportive environment and access to support and accommodations.
Absolutely.
And it's the same with hearing voices. We cannot say that everyone who hears voices finds it distressing. That's not the case. And so basically we have to, recognize that, neurodivergent and Neurodivergent Pride Day is just for so many more people. It's not just for certain things. And that's something we have to unpack. If we are viewing certain neurodivergence a certain way, how are we any better than the pathology paradigm? How 100%. Are we any better than the DSM?
Yeah, this I think about this a lot and couldn't agree more, first off, obviously. But I think it is hard to unpack because, for example, everyone who follows me knows that I mostly talk about autism and ADHD. That's my identity, and eating disorders, which is my main, mental illness thing. But it's interesting. I was talking the other day to Katie Weber, who's the host of Women and ADHD web podcast, which is great if anyone hasn't checked that out. And she was trying to ask me about, the differences between ADHD and autism, which I get quite a lot. And it's a complex answer. But the really interesting thing is, ADHD, there is a medication that can help. And autism, there's technically not, there's medications that can help with certain things, but there's not an actual autism medication like there is for ADHD. And so she was talking to me about how there's this difference between the two communities in acceptance. And so, ADHD, it's like take your meds and fix it. And autism, it's like there's not much you can do, so embrace it. And that was really interesting to me because I always find that the autism side of it's more stigmatized, especially because of the social element, that ADHD is often like people more superpowered a bit more.
No. See, while I do think ADHDers we're often more seen as superpowered, I don't think people realise how pathologized we are.
Totally.
We
Totally.
are forced onto medication because in order to make us function in a way that meets like capitalist neuronormative standards.
Yeah.
Like we are like, you know, so much like ADHD traits are seen as like character flaws or failings.
Yeah.
So much of like ADHD traits actually like you know they like they're seen as such bad things: being late, being forgetful, being impulsive, talking too much, interrupting
Getting
people.
distracted. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like seen as such like shitty things. And like, and as well, like I do not think that we have like actually applied the same level of advocacy to ADHD that we have to like autism.
Yeah. Totally.
Like we still call them executive functioning deficits when they're executive functioning differences.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, like, you know, I obviously, you know, this is called Princess and the Pea for a reason. I'm a very sensitive person, and very sensory sensitive in a lot of ways. But on a day-to-day basis, nowadays that my sensory needs are much more accommodated for, you know, because I have the privilege of working at home and for myself and so many reasons, my biggest challenges continue to be executive functioning based, mostly because of how it affects my interaction with the world and how others perceive those things. And internally, it's a lot easier for me to say, you know, I need to wear noise cancelling headphones because it's too loud and it's overstimulating, but it's hard for me to say, you know, I need someone to help me do the dishes because I can't. Like, and it's not because I'm lazy and it's not because I don't want to. God, I would love to live in a always tidy, kept house, and the internalized shame and stigma around that is really, really rough.
No, 100%.
I totally agree that we have so far to go in the ADHD world.
Yeah, especially like I see so many like recommendations and tips and ADHD hacks that focus on changing us and improving our executive dysfunction.
Fix your ADHD.
Yeah, and it's like, hang on, would you say a specific person to like improve their communication, like, or socializing? No, it's about accommodating. So why can't we apply that to ADHD?
100%.
Like, you know, I think we just need that same level of advocacy.
I agree.
I think part of the reason we don't have that is because like ADHD is a neurodivergence that basically exists in complete opposition to capitalism. There was so for my book I did some research into basically like the history of ADHD, like the diagnosis itself, and it's basically shows like how pretty much every single ADHD trait goes directly against what capitalism wants.
So true.
Yeah, and so like I feel like that's why it's so hard and like difficult to accommodate ADHD, because in order to accommodate our ADHD, we really have to unpack neuronormativity and capitalist expectations and reframe so much of that. And so like advocacy for ADHD like does require much higher systemic and societal level of change rather than like attitudes and everything. And
so true. Yeah, and it's funny because even when you do that work internally, you're still constantly faced with going out and, you know, interacting with a world that hasn't, mostly. Maybe your loved ones have, or maybe your people you're exposed to in your immediate circle have done the work with you or whatever, but usually most of your interactions with the world will still be in a state where that's not accepted. And so that can be really hard to constantly have that coming at you, even if you've done that internal work to try and unpack all of that. We're getting heaps of comments, which I'm loving and reading, like while listening to Sonny's genius. But I'm terrible at multitasking. So sorry, guys.
Take a moment of silence for you to read the comments.
Yes. Well, we've got some great ones around, you know, Tess said PTSD too when we were talking about other things that included absolutely Tess. And, you know, I think majority of autistic people have PTSD, at least complex PTSD, just from existing in a world that's pretty traumatic for us. Neurodivergent Pride validates diverse voices and experience of our community. Absolutely. grace, regardless of whether someone wants their symptoms or traits or disabling traits alleviated or not. There is still reason to break the stigma and have pride in who we are as marginalised neurotypes. Yes, go Grace.
Yes.
And Penry, this one's good. This is a long one though. I'm like literally terrified of reading out loud. It reminds me of the debates around LGBTQ IA plus pride with the community and the challenges of needing an umbrella term so we can ally within our own broader community. Yeah. So ADHD and autistic, bipolar, dyslexic, etc. folks came together. The term neurodivergent allows for sharing, connection, like queer folks. So true. Like I love neuroqueer too. But the challenge is how to be inclusive within our community. Took the queer community many years to trying to work out how to give space for others when different cohorts have different levels of support or discrimination. That's so true. Yeah, it's so different. It's going to take us
many years. I mean, I think, it's going to take us many years.
And we're really early days.
Yeah. Me and Annie, we like to get a head start.
We do. We're excited. And then Madeline, excited to catch this. Happy Neurodivergent Pride Day. Yes. Woohoo. And then Grace, like my daughter is ADHD and I'm autistic and we both take Zoloft. I also take Zoloft for anxiety, but she can't take Adderall because it causes her intense anxiety and heart racing. Yeah, I actually know quite a few autistic ADHDers who can't take ADHD meds because of their sensitivity to medication. It's not uncommon.
And ADHD meds aren't the be-all, end-all. Just because you take ADHD meds doesn't mean your ADHD goes away. You still need to use strategies. You still need accommodations. You still need
access. 100%.
And work with your brain.
Yeah.
ADHD is one tool, but it does fuck all. And I'm allowed to swear, right?
You can swear. I do warning at the well, this is live, so people should probably know. But I do put intro in when I put it up properly and warn people about discretion because I swear a lot too. Anyway, but no, I think that's a really good point. And like I take ADHD meds and my husband and I both do and we love them. Like we wouldn't really be coping well with it. I don't honestly though, but it's not even executive functioning. When I miss my meds, because I do, ADHD, don't take them every day because I can't. I really struggle more with emotional regulation, like a lot more. And so one of the first things I usually notice is like I'll be really struggling and my partner will be like, have you had your meds today? I'm like, oh. And so it's not just for exec function. Yeah.
Yeah, it's for other things too.
But
honestly,
it doesn't fix my ADHD.
Exactly. Like it makes some things easier, but you still need to do the work.
Yeah.
Honestly, the most helpful thing that my ADHD meds help me with. So I'm not on them any day. I take them when I need them. But the most helpful thing they do for me is they help me to pee. Like I won't pee all day. Take me 6 hours to get up the motivation to pee. Yeah. When I'm on my ADHD meds, if I need to pee, I'll be like, oh, I need to pee. Then I do it.
Do you think that that's also like because it's affecting like your interoception and attention and stuff?
I'm not sure. I think it helps with so what it does for me, like this is how I experience ADHD meds. It's like so I'll have lots of thoughts that go pew 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 pew. But when I'm on ADHD meds, I'll have pew 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 pew. Like my thoughts are
slower.
They're more linear and like there's like one train track rather than 20 train tracks. So when I have like slower thoughts, it means I'll have a thought and then like it'll stick in my brain longer than it normally would. So then I'm able to act on the thought.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true because I'm totally similar. And, sometimes I miss the speedy thoughts. Like I do love them even though they can be draining. But, yeah, in terms of being able to sort of get stuff done, it's a little bit better, but it's not that much better. And I must say, these days, majority of my work is with neurodivergent people, which I love. Yay, neurokin. But I've just recently, I'm almost finished my first big course, Autistic ADHD Empowerment, and I've had the most incredible group of neurodivergent adults on it who have been just so amazing and supportive. Like I I was planning it, and this started at the end of Jan, okay? I was planning on doing 2 hours a week at Tuesday nights for 6 weeks. And I think I did the first 2 weeks, and then the third week something came up, and then I did the fourth week, which was the third week because I missed a week, and then something came, and like it kept getting delayed. And like I'm very honest and open with everyone I talk about and work with or anything about how I'm still figuring it out. I'm not perfect, and that's okay. That's part of this, right? Like anyone that tells you they've fixed their ADHD or autism are lying, and avoid them like the plague because they're toxic. Anyway, but they've just been so wonderful, and in some of my emails where I've sent messages out to them saying, look, you know, I've got this stuff happening and I'm really I don't have any spoons left. They've all just been so accepting of it, and it's not changed their interaction with me in any way. Like it's beautiful, because usually when that happens with neurotypicals or even just people who haven't unpacked their own ableism, it can be really harmful and hurtful. And so many of them, I got emails back saying like, oh, I feel like this is giving me permission to do the same, because I've got so many things in my life that I'm pushing through and killing myself to get done, because if I don't, the world will judge me, aka masking, aka heading towards burnout. And so, you know, I wanted to talk about that because I think it's really a big part of why we do need to acknowledge this stuff and talk about how it is really actually okay. You can still be successful and not look and act like a neurotypical, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like you can build a lifestyle that, you know, looks utterly different than, you know, how, you know, other lifestyles look. And like, that's okay.
Totally.
And I think as well, that's why we kind of have to acknowledge, like, you know, like when it comes to neurodivergent and neuronormativity, that a lot of what is neuronormativity are actually like, you know, unfair expectations and ideals that so many people fail to live up to. And not even just neurodivergent people, but neurotypical people also to live up to neuronormative ideals and expectations too.
Yeah.
And you know, I think a lot of what is neuronormative expectations is actually capitalist and colonialism and white supremacy. And I like that is just so heavily tied to that.
So much so.
Neuronormativity is all about being, you know, functioning in a certain way, a set of, you know, ideals, a set of expectations and standards on how people should function within society. And we cannot ignore that, you know, society is obviously, you know, heavily influenced and informed by white supremacy culture and capitalism. So obviously
colonialism, yeah.
It's based on that. And so we can't actually unpack neuronormativity unless we actually also unpack the other things and recognize that so many expectations and things that we think are the right thing to do or the norm isn't actually like how we should do. And one tiny little example is just the idea that you should have a clean house. I mean,
my God, yes.
Literally that you should have a clean house, and they should have a clean house that you're lazy or you're dirty or you're disorganized or you're a terrible parent or you're a terrible person.
Or you suck at adulting or whatever.
Yeah, you know what? There is nothing wrong with having a messy house. I'm sorry, but some people have
totally agree. Yeah. I keep this like thing. I just put like 4 things on the floor behind me. It's like I pretend that I'm neat and my house is chaos. Like our dining table is my dumping zone, but also because trash neuronormativity when it comes to dinner times. My family do not eat at a dining table. Proudly, I'm very traumatized by being forced to eat at a dining table as a kid.
Eating at a dining table is neuronormative expectation.
Yeah.
But it's true.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure there's neurodivergent people that love eating at a dining table. And if that's you, awesome, do it. Yeah, but oh my God, there's so many of us that it harms.
That as the right way to eat dinner.
There's no right way.
Dinner, and eating at a dining table is not the only way to eat dinner.
Yeah. Amen. I don't tend to do a heap of training in like non-health professional spaces, you know, like more corporate stuff, just because I find that space tends to be less sort of, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but less openly invested to learning about neurodivergence and implementing those things. But I did do a course, I think it was in Feb. One of the courses I got asked to do, it was like 3 1-hour workshops, all about just neurodiversity basically. And don't hire me if you don't want this stuff. Like, I'm all over the internet. If people should listen to you and I if they want to hire us, because we live and we speak about who we are and we hold our values out there, right? Like, we're not out here saying all these things and then going behind the scenes and changing our message or changing our views. And so it really surprised me when this HR person, who was one of the main people involved in hiring me, and just basically got upset because my dog barked once in an hour's presentation. What was it? There was just like basically all of her comments were just pointing out everything that was wrong with me as a neurodivergent person. I'm like, did you actually listen to the presentation? This wasn't just me. I did it with my advocacy friend, Alana. We're planning on doing a podcast episode to talk about it more, but I just wanted to bring it up here because I'm like, I think if there are diversity, equity, inclusion and belonging HR people in this space watching us right now, please know that we want to help you and we're so happy that you're here and we really need allies. But we also need to be respected and we also need you to do the work, because I think so often they're not willing to do the work. I don't know how much that is not conscious, but it's a really big problem. And there's a lot of people who aren't on places like LinkedIn, which is very corporate-esque, because of that more toxic culture that are far less in places like TikTok and Instagram, for example.
Yeah. Like, I don't think they're realizing that when they are, by reinforcing professionalism, they are reinforcing neuronormativity. When you expect this level of professionalism, you are not making space for neurodivergent people and our differences and experiences. And like, I think a big part of learning to accept neurodivergent people is to challenge professionalism and your expectations in regards to professionalism, how to talk, how to dress, how to act, how to greet people, the right things to say, how like
wasted most of my 20s on that.
I think that's just so important.
Authenticity. Yep, absolutely. We're getting so many good comments around this. Yeah, authenticity is so key. It's funny because like me being here right now, we chatted before this, and like I've had less than 3 hours sleep and I'm exhausted.
And the funny thing is, I'm actually hungover because I went to a party last night. So
yeah, we're both low on spoons, basically. But we're here because we've put things in place. Like, for instance, if this was pre-neurodivergent awakening Annie back in her 20s, there's no way I'd be doing a live stream on the internet with no makeup and my hair looking like a hot mess. Like, yes, I put my rainbow dress on because it's Pride Day, but like I just wouldn't do it. I just either I'd bail, I avoid it, or I'd push through and I'd do it and then completely crash. Whereas I'm like, no, I'd rarely put makeup on these days because I just don't have the spoons to spare. And that's fine. And I don't think that makes me any less professional. And I can't believe I used to buy into that rubbish around how we should act and look and behave. And there's so much of that, swept up in diet culture and body image and, gender. And there's just, it's a lot. It's a lot to unpack.
No, absolutely. There are basically, systems that reinforce certain ideals that don't accommodate, the diversity of human experiences. And it's these systems that we are directly challenging.
Absolutely.
And that we have to continue challenging. And I think, bringing it back to neurodivergent pride, I mean, that's why we want neurodivergent pride. That's why we need neurodivergent pride, because we want to be like, hey, these systems are telling us we are wrong for the way we are. And neurodivergent pride is directly challenging these systems. Be like, hang on, no, the systems are wrong. We are not.
Exactly. The system's broken, not us.
Yeah.
Mic drop. 100%. No, and it's true because and this is why I do so much in the health space, because I spent most of my 20s seeing every health professional under the sun, and so much of the messaging, and even actually I should tell you, I went in the other day to the doctor for my pap smear, TMI, and it was this new lady doctor, and she was very kind and nice, but I was really anxious because I've had a lot of medical trauma, and she's unfamiliar and I don't like unfamiliar. And we were just talking about I'm going through infertility stuff and I'm getting meds checked, vitamin levels and everything. And we were talking about vitamin D because I've had really low vitamin D. And I said, I know I should probably get it checked because I haven't been taking my supplements since the last time it was checked, when it was back up above baseline. So I'm worried it's dropping again. And she started lecturing me on the importance of vitamin D. And I'm like, honey, I know the importance of vitamin D. That ain't the problem. That is not the problem here. The problem is 1,000 other things that you are completely unaware of, including how I struggle to take tablets. And so I have to kind of pick about what's the 100% necessary tablets versus less necessary. And then the sensory issues, the remembering, there's so many different layers of why it's hard for me to take any meds, let alone vitamins, that are just not my number one priority. They should be, sure, they should be, but they're not. And so you lecturing me on that, just like you lecturing me on that I need to be thinner or lose weight, or it's ridiculous. Good luck to you, mate. And I try to explain it to her because I'm obviously, this is my job. I advocate, right? So I'm getting better these days at actually speaking up for myself, which is harder to do than speaking up for others, by the way. But she just wouldn't have a bar of it. She just thought that how could someone who knew the importance not do it? And there's so much of that around, how are you not eating a balanced diet, or how are you not moving a certain amount in a certain way? How are you not behaving this way when you know it's how you should? Right?
Yeah. There is just genuinely a lack of understanding and a lack of any acceptance for any experiences that are different to your own.
Yeah.
As soon as someone does something in a way that's like, oh, whoa, that's different. That's weird. They're like, bad.
Yeah.
No.
I was trying to do that.
But obviously that's the way society has always treated anyone who's different. If you're a person of color, if you are gay, if you're trans, if you're disabled, because you're different from, because you're different, that means it's bad. And that is how society has always treated people. And God, we got to get over our whole fear of being different. What the... Yeah.
It's not serving anyone, right? It is serving this very tiny proportion of the most privileged.
I guess it's serving the medical model of pathology paradigm and the big pharma, and that's what gets me. So I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD when I was a kid. I think we're going on. It was 2000. What year is it? 23 years ago. I was diagnosed 23 years ago. I mean, the fact that I was diagnosed as a kid as a that is wow.
So rare.
Clearly obvious. So I was diagnosed back then, where neurodiversity was only just coined a few years prior.
In the 90s, late 90s.
And so I grew up with a very deficit understanding. I genuinely grew up believing there was something wrong with me and that I was broken and that I needed to be fixed. I grew up believing the worst of me. And so that's why neurodivergent pride to me, and just neurodiversity and neurodivergent and, neurodiversity paradigm as a whole is so important to me, because I do not believe that anyone should grow up feeling like there's something wrong with them, like they're broken or disordered or like they need to be fixed. And I don't think that is basically helpful for anyone. Like, shame is not a motivator. Shame is not a good motivator. Shame is not something that serves anyone. And I think, that's why we need neurodivergent pride.
Oh, I could not agree more. I think...
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm so excited.
You go.
Say it, Sonny. No, I think that's so true. And, it's interesting. Obviously, I'm going to keep bringing up eating disorders. I don't know why. Probably because I'm doing a masterclass in eating disorders tomorrow. It's on the brain. Anyway, it's interesting because in the eating disorder world of, mental health care, they talk about ego dystonic and syntonic, and they talk about how the eating disorder is that evil devil voice on your shoulder, and it's not who you are, it's not you, it's that. And as an autistic person, I find that so deeply problematic, because so much of eating disorders are wrapped up in our different thinking in terms of, being more perfectionistic and more, liking sameness and restriction and repetition and control. And to then go and tell me that my eating disorder voice is bad, you're simultaneously telling me that my autism is bad. Yeah. And I don't want to borrow that, honey. No, you're missing the point. It's actually not bad in any way. It's just I've got this extra layer of, of stuff happening that I'm trying to cope basically with trauma. And that's the way my body or mind thinks is the easiest path. And so you need to show me a better path, or it's not going to stop. And that's why autistic people have the most long and enduring rates of anorexia nervosa, because we're not given another path. We're told that the eating disorder is bad and tried to explain our way out of it. Yeah. And then no actual support given to how our brains work and bodies function.
Yeah.
It just seems so basic to me.
Focus on recovery and recovery looking a certain way, that basically everyone fails because we are reinforcing that recovery looks like this. And if you don't do that, then you're not recovery.
Neuronormativity.
That is a part of neuronormativity, 100%. Yeah. It is insidious. It is rampant.
So
it is
bad.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's why we need neurodivergent pride to challenge neuronormativity and
100%.
to recognize that just because we diverge from neuronormative expectations and ideals doesn't mean there's something wrong with us.
No, exactly. And I was talking to Dr. Mel Hauser the other day about long COVID and autistic health, which is just very fascinating to me. And I'm sorry to keep talking about autism. This is supposed to be for all neurodivergent people, but I think there's so many parallels in how the neurodivergent community experience the world. And but I just wanted to bring this up because I think that very much links with it. So we were talking about, how autistic people have higher rates of things like gastrointestinal problems and mental health problems and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or hypermobility. And there's this link to MCAS or mast cell activation, and it's really fascinating. But all research, which I dive into because I'm a nerd and I love it, yay, the conclusions drawn and the motivation is very questionable. So, for example, obviously there's more and more people are starting to talk about autism and MCAS or mast cell activation syndrome, and basically saying that autism is just brain inflammation, and that if we fix the mast cell thing, that the autism wouldn't exist. I'm like, oh dear. I mean, maybe.
But way to ignore neurodiversity.
Right?
I mean, the whole point of neurodiversity is that every single brain is different. There are human differences. We do not all function the same way.
And until you know that that's sure, which we don't, maybe just don't sprout it out as if it's something that we need to fix,
Yeah.
But also, like, they talk about things like, oh, you know, this treatment, this type of diet or whatever has, you know, reduced the symptoms of autism. I'm like, has it though? Or has that person got more access and support because they're focusing on a certain diet, which just inherently means they're getting more attention and support with their executive functions and such, and are therefore feeling less distressed and therefore showing less autism traits, which is just trauma, because that's what the world thinks autism is, and we know it's not.
Yeah, so much of the DSM criteria focuses on what autistic people experience when they're in distress or, like, at their worst, rather than being like, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. And I see this in research all the time, and I'm like, what is wrong with these people? And truly, I believe that what is wrong with these people is that they're not autistic, or at least knowingly so, and they're not listening to autistic people, because if they were, they would not be making such ridiculous conclusions. Like, it's why I refuse to go back to university. Like, I would absolutely do I'd do 5 PhDs. I'm that obsessed with research and reading.
I'm going back to university.
I know you are. I'm disgusted with you.
I know, when I asked you, I was like,
I know.
Tell me not to. You're like, don't do it. I'm like,
don't. No, good on you. I can't go back. That's the university, like all of these things, are heavily entrenched in neuronormativity. The structure, the rigidness, the lack of innovation and flexibility, I can't take it anymore. I just don't have time for that in my life. But I still will do all of this research and continue to read all of these things, because we've got to keep it in check. Like, we've genuinely, if we're not speaking up about this stuff, they get to keep going and doing it, and no one's holding them accountable. And that is what, to me, when you told me about creating Neurodivergent Pride Day, I was like, we need it so badly, because we need a more obvious path to accountability and pride. But, like, I know it's not.
Well, solidarity. I think
solidarity.
Pride Day is an opportunity for solidarity between neurodivergent people, and I'm not just talking autistic people, ADHD people.
Yes,
I'm talking about
everyone.
People, for us to basically, you know, find solidarity and band together against harmful research or harmful organizations.
Ignorant.
It is, and I think that's really important.
Research,
As well, like, obviously, I think within social media, so much of the neurodivergent community is predominantly, like, autistic people and ADHDers, because unfortunately, other neurodivergences are excluded by autistic and ADHD people.
So true. Even though most of us have multiple neurodivergence anyway.
The autistic and ADHD community need to work on.
That's very true.
And you know, so often other neurodivergent people are excluded from neurodivergent community, and they're excluded from conversations where, so for example, schizophrenia, they experience so much discrimination and oppression and harm and forced hospitalization, and so their experiences, their perspectives, their advocacy is so damn important to the neurodivergent community and moving forward and challenging neuronormativity. Like, we don't just want to challenge neuronormativity when it comes to how we pay attention or how we communicate,
or our sensory experience.
We want to challenge neuronormativity,
every way of thinking,
hearing voices and seeing visions, or being a plural or a system or multiple. Like, those are things that we want to challenge. We don't just want to talk about sensory differences, but the other stuff that seems like, I know, that other people stigmatize more.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's true. I think that these days you see things like ADHD and autistic all over social media, and yet I don't see anyone putting, like, schizophrenia or anything that's even slightly more stigmatized, you know. And I think that really, it reflects the level of oppression and harm that they're really experiencing. And it's similar, and this is why I think it's so important to band together, because, you know, like, for instance, there's so much going on in sort of TikTok, and I think Instagram's probably one of the main places around body acceptance and fat liberation. And yet LinkedIn is like crickets when it comes to, like, anything to do with anyone talking positively about fat people. And I think that also reflects how not accepting we are of fatness. I say that as a fat woman, very proud fat woman. And that's similar in all areas. And so, like, I was talking the other day with Jen Blythe, who's CEO of Deaf Australia, and we were both the only two openly disabled people speaking at the suicide prevention conference. And, you know, she was everything she said, we sat in each other's speeches, of course, like, duh. Like, we're like, you know, support each other. But everything she said in her speech, I literally sat there the whole time nodding vigorously because I couldn't help it, but, you know, and she said to me after, like, she loved that. It was so reassuring. And I was like, everything you said, I was like, yes, yes, yes. I am not deaf at all. I have great hearing. And yet so much of the deaf experience I can relate to as a neurodivergent person. And so much of their access barriers overlap with my access barriers, even though they're coming from different places. So I think, sorry.
I was just going to say, like, I think Neurodivergent Pride has a lot to learn from the Deaf Pride movement.
Yeah, 100%.
Because of like I genuinely, and same with the Mad Pride movement.
Yeah.
You know, I think we've got a lot to learn because obviously, you know, deaf people, they've been doing this fight for a hell of a lot longer than neurodivergent people.
Yeah, because you can't mask deafness. Like, to an extent, maybe you can do some lip reading or something, but it's much harder to mask.
Being viewed as, you know, someone that needs to be fixed or changed. And, you know, how on earth can they survive in this world?
Yeah.
So, we have a lot to learn from them. But I think we do really need to make sure that we start elevating neurodivergent voices and experiences that differ from autistic and ADHD people. And that's actually something that I want to do next year for Neurodivergent Pride Day. I actually want to organize basically an online virtual conference where we have neurodivergent speakers who, you know, have different neurodivergent experiences, non-speaking autistic people, people with psychosis or schizophrenia, people who are systems, or
so
people
needed.
with bipolar, acquired brain injuries, Tourette's, basically different people who actually represent, like, you know,
the mega marginalized neurodivergents.
And sharing their experiences and, like, you know, what pride means to them and all that. And I think, like, that would be such a really cool virtual conference because it would actually represent, like, the whole neurodivergent umbrella, not just, like, I mean, look, I love us too, but we're like, you know, two white autistic ADHD.
I know, right? AFAB,
You know, you've got any disorder thrown in there. I've got, you know, like BPD and bipolar and thrown. But at the end of the day,
I got anxiety and depression, a bunch of other shit too. But I'm like, I just all together, like, it just blends.
We need more voices.
We
like,
do.
Elevated about when it comes to neurodivergence and
100%. And there's so many conferences and things on autism and ADHD, and, like, barely anything on the other stuff that's not just blatantly run by mental health professionals and very pathologizing.
Even in neurodiversity conferences, they're all about autism and ADHD and learning differences.
As if that's what that means.
I've never seen a neurodiversity conference that has had anyone with schizophrenia or bipolar,
or at least not as, like, the actual what they're representing. Like, for instance, Yen Perkis, who's amazing, talks openly about schizophrenia, but is primarily an autism advocate. And they are amazing at bringing up schizophrenia as well, because I think, you know, why are we trying to make people be one-dimensional? But in terms of having someone who is just schizophrenic talk, never happens.
And that's actually kind of, like, exactly why, like, I'm so passionate about neurodivergence and neurodivergent pride is because, like, so, like, you know, I'm an autistic ADHD, so obviously they're, like, automatically seen as neurodivergent because of the narrative within society.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does not make sense to me for me to view my autism and ADHD as neurodivergent and then my bipolar as disordered. That's like saying some parts of my brain are neurodivergent and some parts of my brain are disordered.
Are yucky and need to be taken away. It logically doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it's like, no, they're all neurodivergent.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, as you already know, because I asked you to be on my show today, is I'm already a huge fan of everything you're doing, and I would love to help you in any way I can to make that a reality next year, because we need it so badly. So watch this space, guys, and we're going to have to wrap up because my little toddler's out there going, where's mummy on the public holiday? But thank you so much, Sonny, for being here today and for everything you do for our community. I am such a huge fan and love you so much.
No, that's Thank you. This was like so awesome for our first conversation ever.
I know. I can't believe it's our first. I feel like I'm catching up with an old bestie.
So natural.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you everyone for being here today, and we hope you enjoyed. This recording will be up in about a week on my channel, so stay tuned. And over and out. Bye. How do I get out of this? Okay. I'm too distracted. I'm like, woo. Here we go. Okay, they can probably still hear us, so.